In the rolling hills of ancient Israel, a grim shadow hung over the house of Saul, long after his demise. The land suffered under a relentless famine that lasted for 3 years, a divine response to unresolved bloodshed. King David, troubled by the continuous suffering of his people, sought the counsel of the Lord. The answer was stark. The famine was due to Saul's unjust massacre of the Gibeonites, a people under the protection of a solemn covenant with Israel. Determined to mend this breach, David approached the Gibeonites, not with accusations but with a question of reparation. What shall I do for you? How shall I make atonement, so that you may bless the inheritance of the Lord? The Gibeonites' response was devoid of greed for silver or gold. Instead, they demanded justice through the blood of the house of Saul. With a heavy heart, David agreed to their terms, but spared Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan and grandson of Saul, due to his sacred oath to Jonathan. Instead, he selected 7 of Saul's male descendants. Among them were Armani and Mephibosheth, the sons of Saul's concubine Rizpah, who had known little of their grandfather's crimes yet were to bear the brunt of his sins. As the barley harvest began, marking a time of renewal and hope, these 7 were handed over to the Gibeonites, who executed them on a hill before the Lord. Thus, the debt of blood was paid, or so it was hoped, to cleanse the land and the people. This chapter sets the stage for the unfolding drama, exploring themes of divine justice and the repercussions of ancestral sins, while introducing Rizpah's profound connection to the fate of her children, a narrative thread that binds the entire story. As the decree was passed down, Rizpah, a woman of strong will and deep maternal love, found herself grappling with the unbearable reality that her 2 sons, Armani and Mephibosheth, were chosen to atone for Saul's blood guilt. Her sons, once boys playing under the vast skies of Gibeon, were now men, bound by chains of a curse they had not cast. The day arrived when the 7 descendants of Saul were to be delivered to the Gibeonites. The site chosen was a barren hill outside the town, a place exposed to the elements, where justice was to be meted out in the view of God and man. The air was heavy as the sons of Saul were lined up, the weight of history and sorrow pressing down upon them. Rizpah watched with a heart torn between outrage and sorrow as the Gibeonites executed her sons. They were hung on the hilltop, left as an offering to appease the wrath of a covenant broken long ago. As the bodies of the 7 hung against the skyline, a silent testament to the severity of divine law, Rizpah's grief transformed into something fierce and resolute. Refusing to leave her sons to be desecrated by the birds and beasts that roamed the wilds, Rizpah took up a sackcloth, spreading it upon a rock near where her sons were hung. From the beginning of the barley harvest until the rains fell from heaven upon them, she stayed by the hill. Day and night, Rizpah kept vigil, driving away the birds by day and the wild beasts by night. Her vigil became a symbol of her unyielding love and the depth of a mother's sorrow. Her resolve did not go unnoticed. The story of Rizpah's vigil spread through the tribes of Israel, reaching the ears of King David. Her act of fierce devotion laid bare the human cost of ancient feuds and royal decrees, challenging the hearts of all who heard it. This chapter delves into the profound emotional impact of the executions on Rizpah, highlighting her strength and the transformative power of her grief. It sets the stage for a deeper reflection on justice, mercy, and the human condition within the narrative. Rizpah's solitary vigil on the windswept hill became a poignant symbol of maternal grief and undying loyalty. As the days turned into weeks, she remained steadfast beside the lifeless bodies of her sons, her presence a silent protest against the cruelty of their fate. The sackcloth spread beneath her became her only comfort against the harsh rock, her watchful eyes guarding the remains from the desecration of nature. Word of Rizpah's unwavering watch reached King David's court, stirring a mixture of admiration and deep unease among the royal advisors. David himself was moved by the reports of her endurance and the dignity she preserved for her sons in death. The image of Rizpah, alone and defiant against the scavengers, haunted him, a stark reminder of the human cost of royal decisions. Compelled by Rizpah's actions and the need to rectify the lingering dishonor to Saul's house, David made a decision that would not only honor Rizpah's sons but also seek to heal the wounds of the past. He ordered the retrieval of the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan from the inhabitants of Jabesh-Gilead, who had once stolen their remains from the public square of Bethshan after the Philistines had displayed them. David commanded that a dignified burial be arranged for Saul, Jonathan, and the 7 descendants who had been executed. It was a significant gesture, intending to bring closure to the lingering spirits of the past. The remains were laid to rest in the tomb of Kish, Saul's father, in the land of Benjamin. This act of restoration was meant to signify the end of the blood feud and the beginning of reconciliation for Israel. As the burial procession took place, Rizpah watched, her heart a complex tapestry of sorrow and relief. Her sons, along with Saul and Jonathan, were finally given the honor denied to them in death. The rains, long withheld, began to fall shortly after the burial, as if the heavens themselves were weeping, washing away the stains of bloodshed and strife. It was seen as a divine approval of David's actions and a symbol of renewed blessings on the land. In this chapter, Rizpah's personal struggle and vigil catalyze a national reflection on justice, redemption, and the consequences of political actions. Her silent endurance leads to a royal decree that aims to mend the fractures within the kingdom, showing the impact one individual's steadfast morality can have on the conscience of a nation. The solemn burial of Saul, Jonathan, and the 7 descendants marked a profound moment of reconciliation and closure for the nation of Israel. The ceremony, led by King David, was attended by leaders from all tribes, signaling a united front and a collective effort to heal from past wounds. As the people watched the remains being laid to rest with honor in the tomb of Kish, there was a palpable sense of a chapter closing, one that had been marked by division and strife. In the aftermath of the burial, King David's actions were widely regarded as an act of wisdom and compassion. By acknowledging the wrongs of the past and addressing them with such respect, David not only fulfilled his duties as the king but also reaffirmed his commitment to the divine laws of justice and mercy. This act of restitution helped to stabilize his rule, which had been shadowed by the complexities of his ascension to the throne and the turbulent history with Saul's family. The impact of this reconciliation extended beyond the political landscape. The community, which had been divided by loyalties to Saul and David, began to find common ground. The rain that followed the burial, ending the long drought, was seen as a divine endorsement of the peace efforts. Fields that had lain barren began to flourish again, and the storehouses of Israel were replenished, symbolizing a new era of prosperity and unity. Meanwhile, Rizpah, whose vigil had ignited this chain of events, remained a revered figure. Her story, passed down through generations, became a legend of maternal devotion and a testament to the power of individual action in the face of injustice. Her resilience transformed her from a figure of tragedy to a beacon of moral courage, inspiring poems, songs, and stories that celebrated her strength and fidelity. As the seasons changed and peace settled over the land, the story of Rizpah's unwavering vigil and the subsequent actions taken by King David had a lasting impact on Israel. It served as a poignant reminder of the consequences of injustice and the redemptive power of acknowledging and rectifying past wrongs. Communities across Israel drew lessons from these events, using them to foster a culture of fairness and compassion in their local governance and daily interactions. Rizpah's legacy, in particular, became emblematic of individual integrity and the influence one person can have on the course of history. Her story was integrated into the education of the young, taught alongside the tales of other biblical heroes who demonstrated extraordinary faith and courage. Schools and synagogues recounted her story, emphasizing her role as a mother who transcended personal loss to advocate for dignity and justice. King David's decision to honor the deceased of Saul's house was also celebrated as a foundational act of his leadership, illustrating the principles of justice and mercy that underpinned his rule. This act helped to solidify his reputation as a king who was not only a warrior and a poet but also a just leader, deeply concerned with the welfare of his people and obedient to God's will. As the kingdom of Israel grew stronger and more stable, the unity fostered by David's reconciliatory actions inspired neighboring nations. Diplomatic relationships flourished as nearby kings and leaders sought alliances with Israel, drawn by its prospering culture and its leaders' wise governance. Trade routes expanded, and Israel's influence in the region reached new heights, bringing wealth and diversity to its people. In his later years, King David often reflected on the lessons learned from the ordeal with the Gibeonites and Rizpah's profound impact. He dedicated several psalms to the themes of justice, repentance, and divine providence, which became integral parts of religious teachings and practices in Israel. As the narrative of Rizpah and the resolution by King David passed into legend, it continued to inspire not just the people of Israel but all those who learned of it. It reminded future generations of the importance of upholding moral integrity, the power of determined peaceful actions, and the necessity of leadership that prioritizes the well-being of all its people. Thus, the story of Rizpah and the actions of King David resonate through time, a testament to the enduring values of courage, justice, and unity in the face of adversity. It stands as a beacon, illuminating the path for all who seek to make a difference in a fractured world.